so our next talk is going to be Dr. Nazune Menka, who is a associate professor in our School of Law, and she will be presenting on indigenous rights and social justice. And so, everyone, please give your hands up for Professor Menka.
Okay. Nazune Gana, that means good day, friends. As in Alaska, we introduce ourselves by telling you who our parents are, who our grandparents are, what village they come from, and ideally that would be in your native language. But I can only offer a very broken, limited version of introducing myself in Koyukon Athabascan. And until recently, I could only tell you about a part of my dad's side of the family tree. This is therefore a story, a very short 5-minute story, about what I don't know. My law students are back there like, what? This is also a story about coming to know and about the power and privilege of knowing. In 2024, just a few months after being hired as the first Alaska Native law professor here at Seattle University, I was looking through the Koyukon Athabascan dictionary, as I have done many times over the years. I saw this picture as if for the first time. It felt like the words Seattle University leapt up off the page. So if you can see below, it says Jules Jetty, Seattle University, 1924. I'd long known that Jules Jetty, here pictured with Elder Eliza Jones, was a co-author of my native language dictionary. But I hadn't known about the Jesuit connection, nor did I equate Jesuit history with Alaska Native history. But as the title to this talk indicates, our histories, indigenous and Jesuit histories, are bound up with one another. This history is complicated. As the Jesuits came to Alaska in the late 1800s, built missions, boarding schools, Jetty is the perfect example of the tension between preserving my native language, whilst also evangelizing, Christianizing, and assimilating Alaska Natives into Western ways of being. It wasn't until recently, shortly before my father passed away, that he casually mentioned he was at Holy Cross boarding school at 3 years old. Holy Cross was one of the first boarding schools established by the Jesuits in Alaska. Shortly after this, I found myself in the archives at the University of Alaska Fairbanks, thanks for the funding for this project, in the Oregon Province Archives of the Society of Jesus. It was in those archives, in the 1887 census of the village of Kayakuk, that I learned what my great-grandparents' names were, and that the Jesuits had changed our family's last name to Monroe, that my grandmother was born in Monroe. After my great-grandfather's confirmation, he was named after one of the priests there. This is an image of that record. You can see here his confirmation, where his name is changed to Monroe. Down that line to the right is our Athabascan last name, Menka. Now, I knew my dad had changed our name back to Menka a few years before I was born, but I didn't know about this history. I didn't know the circumstances surrounding how our names were westernized, and I want to take the opportunity here today publicly to tell you and to honor my dad and to thank him for having an elder name us and allowing us to grow up with Athabascan names. In coming to know this history, I realized that as a professor, I also have the power and privilege as the first Alaska Native law professor here to do the deep work of coming to know these histories, to share these stories, to reclaim our names, to reclaim our languages, and to ask the question, what don't I know? How can I come to know? And why is knowing important? It has been said knowledge is power, but it's more than that. It's peace, it's safety, it's community, and perhaps most importantly, it's healing. Why is this environmental justice? Why is language reclamation environmental justice? We have a saying in Athabascan, Dananana Hanash, the land speaks, but the land also remembers. Elder Eliza Jones spent 30 years working on Jetty's manuscript for the Koyukon Athabascan Dictionary. It is full of ways the language connects us to the land, Tliigi Hutan Kasasi. In English, this means the Big Dipper, but it's defined in the dictionary as the native calendar. You see, Indigenous language connects Indigenous ways of knowing not only to the land, but to the stars. The revitalization of Indigenous language and law is foundational to repairing the harms of colonial extraction, Jesuit assimilation, and ensuring just, sustainable futures. They have asked us to end our Earth Talk with a call for action, but I'll end with a few questions. What more don't we know? How can we come to know it? How can Seattle U use its power and privilege to do the deep work of coming to know? Instead of simply speaking of the principles of Laudato Si, or care for our common home, what if SU engaged in actions to reestablish a commitment to tribal nations and Indigenous peoples? What if SU engaged in reconciliation by furthering the Jesuit principles of education to reverse the loss of traditional languages, the traditional laws, and traditional ways of being? What could Seattle University become if it honors the bound-up histories of Jesuits and Indigenous peoples by creating a shared future? Basi, thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Menka. That was a really beautiful story. And something I just want to highlight is it's really important to know where we come from, and those stories can be told through the earth and the context that we all exist in. So thank you so much for that.